Ever wonder why your phishing reports feel like they're missing half the story? Most dashboards just show surface level numbers, but behind those simple stats is a constant stream of real threats slipping through cracks. Today, I'll show you how to transform Microsoft Defender data into living dashboards that actually tell you what's happening in your environment and what you're not seeing yet. The hidden layer, what Defender knows that your reports don't. If you've ever looked at your security dashboard and thought, looks good to me, you're not alone. Execs love a tidy chart, blocked emails, a drop-in reported phishing, maybe one or two suspicious sign-ins. It's comforting, right? But here's the catch. The data sitting right underneath is almost never as simple as those friendly graphs make it seem. In most orgs, the actual story is far more complicated, largely because those dashboards pull from the same handful of exportable stats. A lot rides on whatever filter you set in your mail flow reports or security tool. Most people stick to what's easy to get out of Exchange Online or the built-in phishing report from their email provider. If a user flagged something, tick mark. If an email was blocked, bar goes up. End of story, or so it appears. But Microsoft Defender for Office 365 is sitting on a gold mine of details most teams skip over completely. It's the classic iceberg. Everything you show in a regular incident review covers about 20% of what actually gets picked up in the background. What Defender captures is almost embarrassingly detailed. It logs every click your users make on links inside emails, even when SafeLinks steps in to stop a detonation. It tracks those silent near-miss moments when a phish was one click away from success. Automated investigation and response runs playbooks in the background, picking up on correlated signals your manual review would probably never spot until the situation escalates for real. Most dashboards, they just don't bother to look under the surface. We all know those emails that get blocked right away get counted, but a targeted attack that blends into a newsletter and is manually reported by one vigilant user, often lost in the noise. Let's talk reality for a second. I saw this firsthand last summer. Security had a dashboard that looked flawless. Trend line of blocked phishing up, reported incidents down, execs all happy. Meanwhile, a low-volume spear phishing campaign was targeting the finance team. Defender tagged it with a high severity, ran an automated investigation, and quietly bundled up the event in the backend logs. None of it landed in the weekly cybersecurity summary because nobody was pulling data from the automated investigation and response logs. It wasn't even a blip for execs until someone got suspicious about a calendar invite. That's the gap. Defender caught the signal, but the dashboard never showed it. If you crack open Defender's portal, there are three sources that almost always get left out: Threat Explorer, automated investigation and response, and user submissions. Threat Explorer is not just a list of threats. It maps relationships between malicious files, sender infrastructure, and user behavior. It tracks attack campaigns, figuring out who else in your org saw the same phish, even if no one reported it. AIR, that's automated investigation and response, does more than block an obvious threat. It pieces together what your automated policies did, what devices were checked, how compromised accounts were flagged, which mailboxes were scanned for potentially harmful content long before a breach is visible to end users. And user submissions, probably the least appreciated signal, layer something valuable on top: human reporting of suspicious items that the filters missed. Defender takes those and sometimes surfaces genuine threats by combining user intel with backend analytics. Research from Microsoft regularly shows data gaps between what's available in Defender logs and what actually gets piped into exec-facing tools. Even in mature security programs, you'll see dashboards showing blocked mail totals but skipping over AIR investigations, user-reported near-miss phishes, or campaign mapping data from Threat Explorer. In many tenants, nobody's wiring up the automated investigation tables to reports at all. It's an extra export, another click, something to fill next quarter's backlog. The net effect is that leaders walk into security reviews seeing 0 incidents when what actually happened is much more complicated. They miss context. What threats got closed but were caught at the last second? How many users actually clicked something dangerous before the block? Or which attack vectors are being tested by threat actors right now? This isn't just a technical shortcoming. It's an awareness problem that can leave the business exposed. Say you're only catching 2 out of 5 signals that matter. Maybe you've got blocks in reports, but nothing from AIR or Threat Explorer. Leaders end up believing that the risk is low because those details never make it to the dashboard. But the most useful dashboard surface signals most people miss: who's being targeted and how often, how employees respond to sophisticated lures, and whether automated policies are actually working or just hiding problems until they escalate. The gap between what Defender knows and what hits the regular reports is bigger than most orgs think. Those glossy high-level metrics end up creating a kind of invisible shield where executive teams assume their controls are better than they are. And all the while, the real signals, those near misses, automated investigation results, and full campaign data get lost in the shuffle because nobody wired them into the story. So if all this data is right there in Defender, what's stopping us from using it? The answer, almost no one is building frameworks that take advantage of it. That's what needs to change, and that's exactly what I want to get into next. Beyond the one-off building a repeatable security dashboard framework, if you've ever watched your shiny new dashboard fall apart, the moment Microsoft Defender changes a field name, you already know how fragile these setups really are. Teams get excited, spin up Power BI, connect to that first export, and within a week, they've got a handful of pretty charts. Job done for now. But fast forward to the next Defender update, or worse, the next round of phishing attacks using totally new lures and attacker infrastructure. Suddenly, columns are missing, charts break, and the data just doesn't line up. The reality is, it's straightforward to pull a phishing summary for this month, but building something that adapts to whatever the threat landscape throws at you, that's where most dashboards fall flat. We've all been there. Your team spends hours every quarter scrambling through spreadsheets, manually fixing broken queries, and swapping in new attack types that didn't exist when you built the last report. Someone pulls an export from AIR, another from Threat Explorer, and now you've got two sources that don't even speak the same language. In the background, Defender itself is updating. Microsoft tweaks schemas, new API endpoints arrive, and suddenly all those beautiful visuals are out of sync. If your dashboards rely on manual steps and one-off metrics, you're not just chasing attackers, you're chasing your own tools. That cycle happens because most orgs treat dashboards like fixed artifacts, not living systems. We see a lot of patchwork, tables copied out of Excel, mismatched metrics stitched together, and visuals meant to impress more than inform. The result? Dashboards that tell you what happened last month but can't keep up with what's happening now because they break every time Defender evolves. When executive reporting time comes, teams rush to update everything by hand because automation was always tomorrow's problem. It's familiar, but it's also kind of exhausting and risky. This is where the idea of a dashboard framework comes in, a repeatable modular system that's designed to connect to the real Defender data, model how everything relates, and standardize the critical metrics that actually indicate risk. A real framework isn't a template you download and forget about. Instead, it's a collection of core building blocks. Reliable connectors that pull Defender's freshest data automatically, a resilient model that adapts when the source data structure shifts, a short list of KPIs that matter for threat response, and flexible visuals focused on what matters most, not just what looks pretty. Let's break that down. First, reliable data connectors. Too many teams grab a CSV from the portal, build out a dashboard, and call it a day until next week when they need a new CSV. Instead, you want direct connections using Defender's API, set up in a way that survives authentication changes and schema updates. Power BI's connectors can do this, but only if you invest the time upfront to map how each table and field relates to real threat signals. Second, that resilient data model. Think of all the ways Defender can adjust its logging. New columns, renamed fields, sudden additions for a brand new detection policy. If all you've got is a pile of flat tables, every change is a ticket to go fix broken dashboards. But if your model relates incidents, users, mailboxes, devices, and actions in a unified schema, Defender's tweaks don't derail your narrative. Microsoft's own security ops guidance pushes this approach. Invest first in structuring your data before painting any visuals. Third, prioritized KPIs. Not all metrics deserve equal attention. Executive teams don't need 10 flavors of email blocked. What they want: time to incident resolution, users clicking on threats, high-risk accounts targeted repeatedly, and which attack vectors got closest to succeeding. Defining these KPIs upfront, based on both operational needs and business impact, means your dashboards are more than vanity metrics. They drive decisions. Finally, visual templates that highlight the story. A mature framework always includes layouts for quickly flagging anomalies, escalation paths for incidents, trend lines for campaigns, and simple cues that answer, how bad is it this week? Standardized visuals mean updates don't have to be custom made every quarter when something changes. The difference here is simple. A report tells you what happened. A framework shows you what's changing right now. This is the core of avoiding what Microsoft calls dashboard drift. where tools slowly lose touch with reality and have to be rebuilt from scratch. Instead, you get a setup that grows with your environment. Whether it's a new batch of phishing lures or Microsoft tweaking Defender's backend, your dashboard survives and stays actionable. The net result, you're not fighting the dashboard every time attackers invent a new move. And here's the kicker. A framework is only ever as strong as the data moving through it. Building one is great, but if your data sources are shaky or your connections keep breaking, the whole thing falls apart just as fast as a flat Excel sheet. So how do you actually wire Power BI to Defender and keep your feeds flowing even as the data shifts underneath it? That's where most teams hit the real challenge, and it's what we're unpacking next. Connecting the dots, data modeling and Power BI pitfalls. If you've tried pushing Microsoft Defender data into Power BI and found yourself knee-deep in cryptic error codes or missing tables, you're not alone. The sign-in looks easy enough. Hook up a dataset, hit refresh, and expect a stream of clean updates. 5 minutes later, Power BI throws a red warning about a broken connection, and you're scrolling help forums trying to figure out which column name changed this month. These are the pitfalls that slow down almost every team. Pulling raw Defender data sounds like a win, but right away you run into mismatched schemas, API rate limits, and a laundry list of missing relationships. You're working with logs that were designed for analysts, not reporting, so every export is a puzzle with too many missing pieces. It's a classic trap. Somebody gets an export from the Defender portal, usually a CSV or Excel file, and builds out some charts in Power BI. The results look promising at first, but as soon as someone suggests automating the data feed, all those little mismatches pop up. Defender's APIs don't line up exactly with the portal exports. Field names shift from incident ID to ID, or there's a GUID in one place and a username in another. Even when you make it past the authentication hurdles, you hit API rate limits that stop loads midway, or Defender returns extra fields you hadn't mapped because a new detection feature launched overnight. One of the biggest mistakes is relying on static exports. It sounds easier than learning Defender's REST API, but those exports will never scale. Every time you run the same report, the context changes. Sometimes new attack types appear. Sometimes field definitions get tweaked because Microsoft quietly updated the schema. Teams skipping normalization steps end up with tables full of unknown or inconsistent values. What works for a one-off audit falls apart when you need that dashboard to keep running for 6 months straight. Then there's the battle with Power BI's refresh mechanics. Direct query and data flows are pitched as the dream solution. Hit refresh, and the latest events pour in automatically. In practice, though, direct query brings its own baggage. If you're streaming data in real time, you're working against the clock. Power BI may slow down or throttle requests if your model isn't optimized. Data flows help with cleanup and joining tables, but they add another step where something can break. If you don't have careful control over how your tables join, especially if you've mixed static exports and API pools, errors creep in quickly. I watched a security team set up a weekly data flow refresh, confident that their dashboard would catch anything critical. Looked good until a phishing campaign hit over a holiday weekend. The attack started Thursday night, peaked Friday, but since the refresh wasn't set to pull again until Monday, none of those incidents even showed up in the report they'd prepped for senior management. That slice of time vanished, so the debrief had a hole exactly where it mattered most. API integration can be a minefield, especially with Defender's quirks. Authentication isn't just plugging in a key, it's handling OAuth tokens, setting up appropriate app registrations, and dealing with permissions that change as the security baseline is adjusted. Pagination is another one. Defender's API returns results in batches, so if you're not looping through every page correctly, you're missing large chunks of incident data. Even simple fields can be trouble. What's labeled as threat level in one table is risk score in another, or maybe there's a flag for compromised that only shows up if you choose the right endpoint. If your connectors don't explicitly map these relationships, Power BI ends up with mismatched or duplicate entries. Normalization is where the real work is. Threat data is noisy by design. It's pulled from thousands of mailboxes, endpoints, and apps, each with its own format. Unless you run normalization scripts to standardize these fields before they land in your data set, you'll never be able to compare apples to apples. I always recommend setting up data flows with transformation steps, clean the column names, align field types, and translate all your IDs into real usernames or device identifiers. This not only makes data more legible, it creates a model that stands the test of shifting schemas. But even a clean dataset isn't enough unless you build a semantic model. This is the layer where logs turn into actionable intelligence. Map incidents to users, overlay geographic or business unit metadata, and group alerts by threat type or attack vector. The difference is huge. Instead of seeing a chart of incidents this month, you can break down who was targeted, which teams are most exposed, and if certain locations are being hammered more than others. I've seen organizations take an extra step and link Defender data with external HR data or device inventories, which gives even richer context. Now, if a phishing attempt hits the finance team, you immediately see which endpoints were targeted and which users were most likely to fall for it. All this detail means you go from a stack of logs to a living system that adapts as attackers shift tactics. Incidents show relationships, trends become visible. Instead of chasing broken exports every week, you have a setup that tracks what actually matters in real time. That sets you up for the next and maybe most important challenge, turning streams of data into visuals and KPIs that executives will actually use to make decisions. From noise to narrative, executive KPIs and visualization that drive action. If you've ever sat through an executive security review, you know the dashboard ritual by heart. Someone pulls up a slide full of bar graphs, blocked emails, total phishing attempts last quarter, maybe a pie chart breaking out malware types. Everybody nods, but the mood in the room is glazed over. And here's the irony. Even with all those stats on the screen, the one chart every leadership team needs almost never gets included. The missing piece isn't more numbers. It's context that links those numbers to real-world risk and actual decisions executives need to make. Standard metrics like number of phishing attempts blocked might tick a compliance box, but those aren't the numbers that drive change or investment. Dashboards that focus on incident counts or weekly summaries sound informative, but they don't actually answer what leaders care about. Are we getting better at stopping attacks, or are threats evolving faster than our defenses? Too much raw data ends up hiding key signals. If your dashboard looks like an airport arrival board with endless lines and totals, eventually everyone tunes out and starts checking their phones. I saw this play out with a finance sector client last year. Their dashboard boasted all the classics: total phishing mails, number of blocks, and average response time stitched into slick visuals. But right in the middle of Q2, there was a spike, an attack that actually made it past filtering and led to a credential reset for a high-value account. The board presentation buried this incident behind generic charts. The only hint of the breach was a single row in a 10-page appendix. The team thought they were providing full transparency, but in reality, the story of what mattered most was lost in the noise. Instead of sparking a discussion about process improvements or extra training for targeted employees, the meeting circled back to incident totals and ended early. That is, until compliance flagged the event a month later. So, what actually belongs at the center of an executive dashboard? Vanity metrics like blocked emails are easy wins, but they're not what changes behavior. Actionable KPIs do that by zeroing in on outcomes. Take attack success rate, a measure of how often phishing attempts make it through defenses and result in any real impact, like a user clicking a malicious link. If you notice this rate ticking up, that's an instant alarm to review training policies or technology gaps. User click trends go a step deeper. You can see not just who received a phish, but who interacted with it, who reported it as suspicious, and how quickly IT responded. If user reporting rates are rising, that's a healthy sign. If they're flat, attackers might be adapting faster than users can spot threats. Another overlooked metric is dwell time before remediation. This is the window of exposure, the clock that starts when a threat sneaks in and stops when it's contained. If incidents linger for hours, even after detection, you're giving attackers more room to operate. High dwell times directly translate into higher risk, especially in organizations facing targeted attacks. Now let's get specific. 5 KPIs consistently separate noise from the insight executives actually want. First, incident resolution time. How fast do you close out real threats after they get reported or detected? Second, user reporting rates. What % of users who get baited actually spot and flag the phish? This doesn't just measure security tools, it tracks human awareness and shows where education is needed. Third, high-risk entity exposure. Which users, accounts, or systems keep getting targeted again and again? If it's the CFO's mailbox every week, that's a trend, one you need laid out in plain sight. Fourth, attack vector trends are attackers favoring attachments, links, or business email compromise tactics this month. Seeing how these shift lets everyone adjust defenses proactively. And finally, near miss escalation rates, the count of threats detected at the last second after a click but before damage. If these rates spike, you're winning the last mile battle, but barely. Visualization matters just as much as what you measure. Highlight anomalies. Don't let peaks and spikes get lost in the baseline. Use sparklings for trends over time and color strategically. It's not about making dashboards pretty, it's about instantly flagging what's urgent. If resolution times jump after a new attack, that cell should go bright orange, not subtle blue. When user reporting falls off a cliff, it ought to grab attention before the next campaign rolls through. Simplicity here is deceptive. You're aiming for a dashboard where one glance tells leaders what keeps them up at night. Microsoft's Secure Score illustrates this approach. By mapping security actions and configurations to a quantifiable score, it creates direct alignment between technical steps and business risk. When you connect Defender's KPIs to something like Secure Score, you're telling business leaders not just what happened, but what to do next. You relate every metric to a real-world outcome. More clicks means more training. Slower response times mean you need better automation or more headcount. The difference these visualizations make is immediate. Executives stop skimming slides and start asking questions. Why are high-risk accounts showing up every week? What changed last month that led to longer remediation times? Suddenly, your dashboard isn't just a history lesson, it's a living status report that drives decisions in real time. If you want dashboards that actually matter, you need to move past surface-level counts and start telling the story of your defenders, your users, and your threats in a way that demands action. So if you're ready to level up, it's not just about collecting more logs. It's about building dashboards that leaders will actually use with stories that give context, urgency, and direction, because that's what changes outcomes. If you've ever relied on a dashboard and assumed it covered all your bases, now's the time to challenge that comfort. Surface-level phishing stats don't tell the real story. Defender's deeper data adds missing context. Those click logs, near misses, and automated investigations fill in the gaps that simple numbers always leave behind. When you start with richer signals and build a dashboard framework that can survive real change, you end up with a tool that warns you, not just informs you. Ready to see dashboards actually drive action? Subscribe and drop your toughest Power BI security questions in the comments below.